Not all worm casting operations are the same. We want you to compare our product to others. We want you to know just exactly how the empowered earth castings you put on your indoor and outdoor plants are created. We want you to see and understand that our product is completely clean, chemical-free, and natural. The first step is to bring the worm bedding into the barn. Their bedding consists of Minnesota River bottom soil and is about 45% peat. We spread this soil out on the barn floor in about 1-foot layers and make sure it's good and moist. The next step is to mix in the worm food. That's a little misleading because the combination of bedding and the food we add is what the worms actually ingest. The added food is a mixture of grains and other natural products that are chemical-free and custom mixed for us according to a formula we specify. Here you see the castings and bedding in the same photo. The small pellets in the center are castings. The other material may be small stones or other material the worms can't eat. It's called debris. The worms are put in buckets with this bedding or food, and eventually nearly all the bedding or food in the bucket is converted into castings, at which time we need to transfer the worms to a new bucket so they can keep eating. Because the food we add to the peat and soil is organic, the buckets will tend to heat up as the organic matter decomposes. The worms don't like warm temperatures, and unless we keep the buckets in an air-conditioned, ventilated area, they'll try to crawl out. So it's very important that we control the temperature of their living environment. Each bucket batch is carefully recorded so we can control for all conditions that affect the worm's habitat. After the new bedding buckets are filled and moistened one last time, we're ready to start transferring the worms, bucket by bucket, to their new homes. The number of worms in each bucket is very important. We make sure all the worms from one bucket are transferred to the next before another bucket is filled. The buckets that are full of worms and castings and depleted of food are dumped into one end of the rotating screen. In the first stage, on the right, the mesh is very fine and only the worm castings pass through. The second stage allows leftover bedding and eggs to fall through. Finally, the rotating action of the screen separates the worms themselves from any remaining bedding. The leftover bedding and eggs are considered debris. We use the debris on our own crop fields, and though this is not as potent as the worm castings, it does add value to the fields.
What we're looking for here, one, you'll notice the color. If it doesn't show up, it's pitch black, and there's some larger particles that are up on top, but if we look at all the rest of this, these are all castings, literally 100%. We try and make sure that it's not full of specks. If you look in here, you can see bugs and all sorts of stuff crawling around. These are the things that help make it good. And the other thing you'll notice is you don't go very far down and there's these worms. These worms are 18 weeks old. So they're just about 4 months. And these are really robust at 4 months. This would stretch out from here, that'd probably be about 7 inches long.
Some of the eggs are taken from the debris and put in an incubator to hatch. At regularly scheduled times, the worms in each bucket are counted by hand, just to make sure the number of worms in each bucket remains constant. That way we can make sure all the worms have enough to eat and are healthy. The result is some very lively and very happy worms. We're constantly cleaning after each stage in the process to maintain as clean an environment as we can. The castings are gathered, weighed, and separated into piles for packaging. I think you can see from this process that the details are important. If the environment is too hot, the worms are unhappy. If the feed is not correct or polluted with chemicals in some way, it's going to go right through the worms into the castings. If you're not careful about screening the castings correctly, it's possible to get debris mixed in with the castings, and that debris may consist of an unknown composition of unprocessed compost, cow manure, garbage, or whatever other producers feed their worms. That doesn't happen here because those ingredients never touch our worms. If the producer is not diligent about recording the number of worms per volume of bedding, it's very possible to get sick or dead worms mixed into the environment, and they contaminate the castings you receive. When you buy castings, be sure you completely understand how those castings were gathered. We respect our worms, as we do the integrity of this process.